Welcome back, everybody. Ready for another deep dive?
Always ready.
Awesome. It's like this time we're tackling the world of building truly amazing, those standout products.
The ones that really make a difference.
Exactly. We got excerpts from Marty Cagan's Empowered, some summaries on product leadership, even some leadership profiles in the mix.
Sounds like a fascinating collection.
It is. Our listener is clearly trying to figure out what makes those companies that consistently hit it out of the park tick.
I think what's so interesting about all these sources is this underlying theme, of shifting our mindset when it comes to product development.
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
It's not about finding those mythical 10x employees.
Right. Everyone wants that rock star.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's more about how do we build an environment where everyone can excel,
I like that.
where ordinary people can achieve those extraordinary results.
And that starts with, well, these sources say it starts with empowering your product teams.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's unpack that. I've heard this whole empowered teams thing a lot, but Kagan, especially, makes a really clear distinction between those and what he calls feature teams.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And honestly, feature teams sound kind of, well, a little bit like order takers to me.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Just handed a list of features, go build this. No real sense of ownership.
Mm.
I wouldn't be very inspired working like that.
And that's exactly what the sources argue, that lack of inspiration can lead to, wasted effort, missed opportunities.
Oh, interesting.
With empowered teams, it's different. They're given a problem.
Okay.
And they own the why. Why are we doing this?
Not just the what.
Right. They're accountable for the outcomes, the impact.
Not just checking boxes.
So just churning out features.
Okay, so it's less about, hey, build this button that does X, and more about how can we help users achieve Y.
That's it.
I can already see how that subtle shift, just in how you frame things,
Yeah.
could spark a lot more creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. That problem-solving energy.
Yeah, exactly.
And these sources, they actually give some really practical steps on how to build these empowered teams.
Oh.
One that stands out is strategic context. It seems knowledge really is power.
Strategic context. That's
Right.
interesting. It's easy to think, just give a team a problem and off they go.
Yeah, you would think, right?
But these sources are saying empowered teams need more. They need the why.
They need that deeper understanding.
Like, what's the company's vision?
Yeah.
What are our principles?
Exactly. Where are we going?
What's the overall strategy?
If they don't have that, they're just shooting in the dark.
Working in a vacuum.
Exactly. Even if they build something brilliant, technically,
Right.
if it's not aligned with the company's goals or what the customers truly need,
Just a wasted effort.
it's a misstep. So I'm curious, thinking about your own team, are they crystal clear on the overall strategy and how their work fits in?
That's a good question for our listener to ponder. And it makes me think about how leadership is portrayed in these sources.
Okay.
It's not the traditional, top-down, control freak kind of leadership.
The old school model.
Right, right. It's more about creating the right environment for teams to thrive.
I like that.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the sources hit the nail on the head.
Okay.
Just good management isn't enough. You need to create a culture of trust where people can collaborate freely, where they feel safe taking risks and learning from their mistakes.
I see that. These sources really dive into the specific things product leaders are responsible for.
Uh-huh.
And it starts with a clear product vision, like a North Star guiding everyone's efforts.
Yes. That's such a powerful image.
It is.
And that vision should paint a really compelling picture of the future. What is the company trying to create?
Yeah, how are we going to improve people's lives?
Exactly. It's a rallying cry for the whole organization.
And it makes me wonder, what would your product vision be? What change do you want to see in the world?
That's a great question to ask yourself. If you could build a product that made a real difference,
Yeah.
what would it be?
Ooh, I like that. But the vision's just the start, right?
It is.
These sources also talk about translating that vision into a concrete strategy.
Absolutely.
So what does that look like?
The product strategy is all about making those tough choices.
Oh, yeah.
What problems are we going to prioritize?
Which markets are we going to focus on?
Exactly. And how are we going to stand out from the competition?
It's about saying no to some things. So you can say yes to the ones that really matter.
Precisely.
That reminds me of something I struggle with saying no enough.
Oh, yeah. That's a tough one.
These sources really emphasize that product leaders need to get good at that.
They do.
But it's not just about saying no for the sake of it.
No, it has to be strategic.
Right. You need to base those decisions on some clearly defined product principles.
Those guiding values.
Yeah, exactly.
Those principles help teams make consistent decisions, especially when they're facing those tough trade-offs.
Okay.
Things like putting the user first, keeping things simple, making decisions based on data.
Those are great principles.
So having those principles in place, it gives you a framework.
Okay, I see that.
It keeps everyone aligned on what's truly important.
So the product leader sets the vision, translates that into a strategy, defines the guiding principles. Wow, that's a lot.
It is a lot of responsibility.
These sources also talk about evangelizing all of this throughout the organization. Is that really that crucial?
It's absolutely vital, according to Kagan. It's not enough just to set the direction. You need to get everyone excited about the journey.
So you need to inspire people.
Exactly. Product leaders need to be amazing communicators.
Okay.
Real motivators, constantly championing the vision, the strategy, the principles.
At every level of the company.
Throughout the organization.
Got it. So less dictator, more inspiring leader, almost like a coach.
Exactly. Kagan actually uses the word coach a lot.
I'm more interested.
And these sources, they don't just throw out theory, they have some really great real-world examples.
Okay, like what?
Well, one that stood out to me was April Underwood's journey. She went from engineer to product leader at Slack.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
It really highlighted how important persistence is, and seeking out those opportunities to contribute to something bigger.
It's inspiring to see how empowered individuals can rise within a company that supports their growth.
It is. And speaking of inspiring, remember that analogy of product leadership to directing a theater production?
Oh, yes. How could I forget that one?
It was so vivid. It really brought home the point that building a great product is a team effort.
It takes so many different skills and perspectives.
It does. You need that blend of creativity, strategic thinking, and then, of course, you need that flawless execution.
Like a well-choreographed dance.
It is. And the effective product leader, they're the director, shaping the vision, bringing that energy.
It all comes together under their guidance.
Exactly. And that's where we start to see the real difference between feature teams and empowered teams.
Tell me more about that.
We've talked about the why of empowering teams.
Right.
But now it's time to dig into the how.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
And Kagan really gets into the nitty-gritty of how these teams actually operate.
That's what I'm here for.
And it gets really interesting. What fascinated you about the how from these sources?
Well, I was really struck by how Kagan debunks this myth of the 10x employee.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
The idea that you need these rock star developers to build a great product.
The superheroes of the tech world.
Right. And he argues it's just not true.
It's a myth that so many companies fall for.
Yeah, I've seen it happen. And it can be really detrimental.
It can be, because even if you have incredibly talented individuals, their impact doesn't always scale linearly.
What do you mean?
Well, if they're not collaborative, or worse, if they exhibit toxic behaviors.
Right.
Right.
They can actually do more harm than good to a team.
It's not just about individual brilliance.
It's about the team dynamic.
It's about the whole being greater than the sum of its parts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what do these sources say about how these strong product companies approach recruiting?
Oh, that's a good question. Because if you're not looking for the lone wolf, the rock star, how do you build a great team?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
They emphasize that the strong product leaders, they take ownership of the recruiting process.
It's not just an HR function for them.
It's not. They're actively involved.
They're looking for people who not only have the right skills, but also fit the culture.
That's key.
They're investing in the team.
Every new hire is an investment in the company's culture.
So I bet they're pretty picky.
They are.
Yeah.
The sources highlight that they go beyond just, checking off boxes on a resume.
It's more than just skills and experience. It is. They advocate for a really rigorous interview process.
Okay, so what does that look like?
They want to see how candidates think. How do they approach problems? How do they interact with others?
Interesting.
And crucially, they're looking for that passion.
Passion for what?
For the company's mission.
Okay.
That willingness to be collaborative, to really focus on the customer.
So they're not just looking for technical competence.
It's more than that.
It's about cultural alignment.
And passion.
Finding people who are genuinely excited to solve problems, create value for the customer.
That's a great way to put it. But it doesn't stop with the hiring decision.
No.
They stress how crucial onboarding is and ongoing coaching.
You got to nurture that talent.
You do. Support your team members.
I've definitely experienced both good and bad onboarding.
Oh, me too.
What do these sources suggest to make it truly effective?
They say it shouldn't just be about paperwork and introductions.
Right. Death by PowerPoint.
You need to immerse new hires in the company culture. Make them feel like they belong.
Exactly. Connect them with key stakeholders. Give them the resources they need to succeed.
Set them up for success from day one.
Right from the start.
Give them a sense of purpose.
Make them excited to be part of the team.
Exactly. And then the real work begins.
The ongoing coaching and development.
Yeah, that's where the rubber meets the road.
It is. And strong product leaders, they recognize that this is their most important responsibility.
Helping their team members grow.
Reach their full potential.
And that's where we start to see the magic of empowered teams in action.
That's where the magic happens. I'm really curious to hear more about what these sources say about effective coaching,
Oh, me too.
especially in the context of empowered teams.
Yeah, because traditional management techniques, they often fall short.
They do. Kagan offers some really interesting insights on how to coach these teams effectively.
I'm all ears.
It's all about empowering individuals, giving them the tools to take ownership, solve problems, learn from their experiences. Sounds like a great starting point.
And one of the first things he emphasizes is the importance of adopting a coaching mindset.
Okay, what does that actually look like?
It's about truly believing in the potential of your team members and actively helping them to develop their skills and knowledge.
So it's not just about telling them what to do.
No, it's about guiding them, creating a safe space where they feel comfortable taking risks, making mistakes.
Yeah, it's psychological safety.
That's crucial, because if they're afraid to fail, they won't experiment.
And if they don't experiment, they won't learn.
Exactly. So what else does Kagan suggest?
Well, he stresses that coaching should be a dialogue.
Not a monologue.
Right, not a one-way lecture.
It's about asking questions, really listening to what people have to say, giving constructive feedback, helping individuals figure out their own strengths and weaknesses.
So it's much more collaborative.
It is. It's about empowering them to own their growth and development.
It reminds me of that old saying, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime.
I love that analogy. It's about giving them the tools to succeed, not just handing them the solution.
And Kagan actually provides a tool for assessing those strengths and areas for development.
Oh, what's that?
He calls it the assessment. It essentially compares an individual's current skills and knowledge with the expectations of their role.
That sounds really helpful.
It is. It helps you identify where coaching can have the biggest impact.
Instead of assuming everyone needs the same kind of support,
Right. You can tailor your approach.
you can personalize it to each person's unique needs and goals.
I like that. And once you've identified those areas for development, Kagan has a ton of advice on how to create those personalized coaching plans.
I'm all ears. Tell me more.
He covers a whole range of skills:
Okay.
product knowledge, industry knowledge, process skills.
Wow, that's comprehensive.
And he provides specific techniques for each area.
It's like a toolbox full of coaching techniques.
Exactly. The product leader can pull out the right tool for the right job.
I love that analogy. But what I'm particularly curious about is how you coach product people to think and act differently,
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean.
to really embrace that ownership mentality.
To think like leaders, not just employees.
Exactly. Did the sources get into that at all?
They did. They emphasized the importance of coaching product people to think and act like owners,
I like it.
to focus on outcomes, not just output, to consider the wider impact of their decisions.
So they're not just getting bogged down in the tactical details.
Right. They need to step back,
Think strategically.
see the bigger picture.
Exactly. And one of the tools Kagan recommends is the written narrative technique.
Okay, what's that?
He encourages product people to write out their arguments, their recommendations.
It's like a mini business case.
Exactly. A clear, concise explanation of their ideas.
It forces them to really think things through.
It does. To articulate their thinking, justify their decisions.
To flesh out those ideas.
It's almost like a pressure test.
Yeah, I like that.
And Kagan suggests sharing that narrative with the team, with stakeholders.
Okay, so it's not just about individual thinking.
No, it's about building consensus.
Making sure everyone is on the same page.
Exactly.
Now, speaking of challenges, these sources also acknowledge something that I think every product person struggles with: time management.
Oh, tell me about it. There's never enough time.
Right. And Kagan's advice on this is pretty blunt.
Oh, I'm intrigued. What does he say?
He says product people need to ruthlessly prioritize their time
Hmm. Focus on what matters most.
and focus on the most impactful activities.
Easier said than done. I can barely keep up with my email.
Right. Me too.
So what does he suggest?
He suggests aiming for at least 4 hours of uninterrupted time each day.
4 hours? That's a tall order.
I know, right?
So what are you supposed to do during those 4 hours?
Deep work. Things like product discovery, strategy development, customer research.
The big picture stuff.
Exactly. And he really emphasizes saying no to low-value activities.
Delegating when you can.
Creating boundaries.
Protecting that focused work time.
Wow, 4 hours. I struggle to get 4 minutes some days. But I get his point.
Me too.
It's about being intentional with your time and energy.
Not just reacting to the whirlwind.
Right, right. Making sure you're making progress on the things that truly matter.
And that leads us to another key concept. Collaboration.
Okay, how does that fit in?
Well, Kagan argues that true collaboration within these empowered teams,
Yeah.
it goes beyond just working alongside each other.
So what's the difference?
It's about actively leveraging those diverse perspectives, the different skills on the team,
Okay.
to discover the best solutions.
So everyone brings something unique to the table.
They do. And it's about having that high level of trust, that psychological safety.
Right, where people feel comfortable sharing their ideas.
Challenging assumptions.
Admitting when they don't know something.
That's so crucial.
It is. Because if people are afraid to speak up,
Right.
you're not getting the full benefit of their knowledge and experience.
You're missing out on those valuable insights.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and that's where the real breakthroughs happen.
That's where the magic happens. So how do you create that kind of environment?
Well, Kagan offers some practical tips.
Okay, I'm listening.
Things like holding regular brainstorming sessions,
Uh-huh.
conducting shared user research, using visual tools to make communication and alignment easier.
So it's about making collaboration a deliberate practice.
It's not something that just happens magically.
You have to be intentional about it.
You have to create the space and the structure for it to flourish.
Exactly.
But it's not just about collaboration within the product team, right?
Right. We can't forget about the stakeholders.
There are always stakeholders to consider.
Did these sources offer any insights on how empowered teams can effectively work with stakeholders?
They did. And it's a crucial part of empowering teams. Kagan points out that effective stakeholder collaboration starts with building strong relationships.
Okay, that makes sense.
Relationships built on trust and respect.
So it's not just about managing them,
It's about partnering with them.
understanding their perspectives,
Their goals.
finding ways to work together.
To achieve outcomes that benefit everyone.
I like that. Seeing stakeholders as partners, not just obstacles.
Right. And he emphasizes proactive communication.
Okay.
Transparency.
Keeping everyone in the loop.
Sharing information openly.
Involving stakeholders in the decision-making process.
Soliciting their feedback.
Making them feel like they're part of the team.
Exactly. Which makes me think about the role of the product manager. It seems like they need some serious skills to navigate those relationships.
They do. It's a balancing act.
Advocating for the customer.
While respecting the constraints of the business.
Did the sources touch on that at all?
They did. They argue that product managers need to develop those stakeholder management skills.
What kind of skills?
Things like active listening, building empathy, finding creative ways to win over skeptics.
So it's about turning those stakeholder interactions into opportunities.
Opportunities to build relationships, to influence outcomes.
Not just hurdles to jump over.
Exactly.
Speaking of hurdles, these sources also address the phenomenon of imposter syndrome.
Oh, that's a good one. We've all been there.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially in the product world. And I was really surprised by Kagan's perspective on this.
What did he say?
He acknowledges that it's a real thing. A lot of people experience it. But he also argues that it can actually be a sign of healthy self-awareness.
Interesting.
A desire to learn and grow.
So it's not a bad thing.
He actually sees it as a positive thing.
Wow. I've never thought about it that way.
It's about embracing that feeling of uncertainty.
And using it as motivation.
To learn more, to ask questions, to seek out feedback.
Because even the most experienced product leaders are still learning.
They're still evolving.
They're not afraid to admit they don't know everything.
Right. And I love how Kagan reframes it.
How does he do that?
He says, instead of seeing that inner critic as a weakness, see it as a coach, a voice that encourages you to push yourself, to strive for excellence.
That's a powerful shift in perspective.
It is,
And it ties into this idea of continuous learning and growth.
which is so important for empowering teams.
Creating that culture where people feel comfortable taking risks, experimenting,
Knowing it's okay to fail.
knowing they have support even if they stumble.
I've definitely seen how a fear of failure can stifle innovation.
It can be paralyzing.
But Kagan doesn't stop there. He even suggests that imposter syndrome can be a sign of integrity.
Wow, I never thought about it that way.
It's a fascinating perspective, isn't it?
It is.
He argues that people who experience imposter syndrome, they're often highly conscientious.
They care about their work.
They're committed to doing their best.
They have high standards.
Exactly. It's about being genuinely dedicated to excellence,
Always looking for ways to improve.
not just faking it till you make it.
Right. It's about that genuine desire to do great work.
And Kagan links that idea of integrity to another important aspect of empowered teams: decision-making.
Okay, how so?
He argues that good decision-making is rooted in integrity. It's about being dependable, acting in the best interest of the company, being willing to be held accountable for the outcomes.
So it's not just about making decisions that are good for the product.
It's about aligning those decisions with the company's values.
It's about doing the right thing, even when it's difficult.
Exactly. And he offers some great advice on how to make those tough decisions.
Especially within empowered teams.
Right. He advocates for what he calls right-sizing the decision-making process.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means you don't need a formal meeting or a lengthy analysis for every decision.
So how do you decide when to have a quick informal discussion and when to have a more formal process?
Well, Kagan suggests considering the level of risk,
Okay.
the potential consequences of the decision,
So some decisions can be made quickly,
intuitively.
while others require more thought, more deliberation.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between speed and thoughtfulness.
Being nimble without being reckless.
Right. But it's not just about the process.
No.
It's also about who is involved.
Who gets to make the call?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Kagan emphasizes that empowered teams need to be comfortable making decisions collaboratively.
Okay.
He encourages product managers to rely on the expertise of their team members,
To leverage that collective knowledge.
especially in areas like design, usability, and technology.
So the product manager isn't the sole decision maker?
Right. It's about tapping into the wisdom of the crowd.
And that brings us back to empowerment, doesn't it?
It does.
It's about trusting the team to make the best decisions.
And that trust is built through transparency, open communication, shared accountability.
Absolutely.
Speaking of shared accountability, I'm curious how these sources address the challenge of aligning individual goals with team goals.
That's an interesting one. Because it seems like there could be some friction there.
Right. You want people to be individually motivated, but also working towards a common goal.
How do you balance those two things?
Well, Kagan actually devotes a whole chapter to the topic of performance reviews and compensation.
Okay.
And he acknowledges that traditional performance management systems, they often create a competitive environment.
Right. Where people are pitted against each other.
Exactly. And that can undermine collaboration.
So what does he suggest instead?
He suggests a different approach, one that focuses on team goals,
Okay.
shared accountability.
So you're rewarding collective success.
Exactly. Instead of just individual achievement.
But how do you measure individual contributions in that kind of environment?
Well, Kagan suggests using a combination of peer feedback, self-assessment, and manager input. The focus is on understanding how each individual contributed to the team's overall goals.
Not just measuring their individual output.
Right. It's a more holistic approach.
It recognizes the importance of teamwork.
But let's be honest, compensation is always a sensitive topic.
It is. How do you handle that within this framework?
Well, Kagan suggests that compensation should be aligned with the company's overall performance
Okay.
and the team's contribution to that success.
So everyone benefits when the company does well.
Right. And he argues that individual salaries should be based on a combination of factors:
Like what?
skills, experience, contributions to the team.
So it's not just about individual performance.
It's about the overall value you bring to the team.
And the company.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But he also emphasizes the importance of transparency and fairness.
That's crucial.
People need to understand how those decisions are made.
And they need to feel like they're being treated fairly.
Otherwise, you're going to have morale problems.
And a lack of motivation.
Exactly. And Kagan stresses that a culture of trust and open communication is essential.
It's the foundation for everything.
It is.
But let's shift gears a bit. We've been talking a lot about the internal workings of these empowered teams.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's all about delivering value to the customer.
Right. That's the end goal.
So what do these sources have to say about how empowered teams approach product development?
They emphasize that empowered teams are much more than just feature factories.
Okay.
They're responsible for the entire customer journey.
From start to finish.
From understanding the customer's needs to designing and delivering solutions.
Solutions that meet those needs.
And they're given the autonomy to make decisions
To solve problems.
within their area of responsibility.
So they're not just building features, they're solving problems.
For real people.
And that requires a deep understanding of the customer.
Yeah. What do the sources have to say about that?
They highlight the importance of customer centricity.
Okay.
Empowered teams need to really understand their customers.
Their needs, their pain points, their goals.
All of that.
They need to be able to see the product through the eyes of the customer.
And make decisions accordingly.
Decisions that prioritize the customer experience.
Exactly.
I've definitely seen how a lack of customer focus can lead to products that just miss the mark.
It happens all the time.
It's about building the right thing.
Not just building the thing right.
And empowered teams, they're often much better at this.
Why do you think that is?
Well, they're closer to the customer. They have more autonomy,
They can make decisions more quickly.
and they're more likely to be passionate about solving those customer problems.
It makes sense. When you give people ownership, they care more.
Right, they go the extra mile.
They want to see their customers succeed.
Exactly. But customer centricity is just one piece of the puzzle.
True.
They're also all the practical aspects of building and shipping products. The nuts and bolts.
Yeah, how do you actually get things done?
And these sources, they don't shy away from that.
Okay.
They offer a lot of practical advice on how empowered teams can effectively plan, prioritize, build, and ship products.
That's what we need.
One of the key things they emphasize is the product roadmap.
Oh, roadmaps. This can be a bit of a contentious topic, can't they?
Yeah, some people love them.
Some people hate them.
What's the perspective in these sources?
They argue that roadmaps are essential
For what?
for alignment, for communication.
Okay.
But they caution against treating them as, rigid documents set in stone.
They shouldn't be a straitjacket.
Exactly. It's more about having a general direction,
A shared understanding of the priorities.
but also being flexible,
Adaptable.
willing to change course when needed,
They advocate for a more agile approach
where the roadmap is constantly evolving.
based on feedback, market conditions, what the team is learning.
It's a living document.
It's a guide, not a rule book. And they suggest involving the whole team in the road mapping process, soliciting their input, their feedback.
Making sure everyone has a voice
So the roadmap reflects a shared understanding.
of the priorities, the challenges,
It's about creating that sense of ownership.
and buy-in from the team.
Yeah, if people feel like they're part of the process, they're more likely to be invested in the outcome.
Absolutely. And they also emphasize the importance of communicating the roadmap to stakeholders,
Keep everyone informed.
of the progress, any changes in direction.
Transparency is key. I've seen how a lack of communication can lead to confusion,
Frustration.
missed deadlines.
It's a recipe for disaster.
And when it comes to actually building and shipping products, they highlight the importance of iterative development.
The good old agile approach.
Build a little, test a little, learn a little.
Repeat.
They encourage teams to break down large projects into smaller chunks.
More manageable.
Build and test those chunks iteratively.
Gather feedback along the way.
So you're getting something into the hands of users as quickly as possible.
Learning from their feedback.
Iterating until it meets their needs.
You're constantly improving.
And they emphasize the importance of continuous integration and continuous delivery,
Automating the process.
making it easier to ship products quickly and frequently,
That's so crucial for maintaining momentum,
and avoiding those long, drawn-out release cycles.
which can really kill morale.
Like a breath of fresh air.
It is. And they also highlight the importance of data-driven decision-making.
Okay, tell me more about that.
They encourage teams to track key metrics,
Hmm.
use those metrics to evaluate the success of their products.
So you're not just guessing.
You're using data to guide your decisions.
And that brings us back to those OKRs we talked about earlier, doesn't it?
It does.
The OKR framework. It's a great way to align product development efforts with overall business goals.
And to track progress towards those goals.
And when you empower your teams to define their own key results, you create that sense of ownership.
accountability.
That's so crucial for success.
And when you combine that with a culture of transparency, open communication,
You create a powerful feedback loop.
that drives continuous learning and improvement.
It sounds like a pretty compelling approach to product development.
It is, and it's not just theory. We've seen how this approach has worked in real-world settings. Remember that case study we talked about earlier?
Yeah, the online job marketplace.
They really embraced the principles of empowered product teams.
To drive innovation and growth.
They did, and they faced some pretty significant challenges.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear more about that.
What were some of those challenges?
Well, one of the biggest was scaling. They were growing rapidly.
Their market was exploding
They needed to scale their product, their team.
to meet those demands.
But they were struggling to keep up with the pace of innovation. And they were starting to see cracks in their product development process.
That's a common challenge for startups, isn't it?
It is. You start with a small, nimble team.
Full of energy.
But as you grow, things get more complex.
You need to find ways to maintain that agility.
That speed.
And they realized that their traditional approach wasn't going to cut it.
Their hierarchical, top-down approach.
They needed to find a way to empower their teams.
To be more autonomous.
More innovative.
More responsive to change.
And that's when they decided to embrace the principles of empowered product teams.
They saw the light.
They did. They started by reorganizing their teams.
Okay, how did they do that?
They moved away from functional silos.
Those separate departments.
And they created cross-functional teams.
Teams that were focused on specific customer needs.
Customer experiences.
So instead of having separate teams for engineering, design, and product management,
They brought them all together.
into these cross-functional teams.
Where everyone could collaborate more effectively.
And they had teams dedicated to specific areas of the product.
Like the employer homepage.
Recruiter tools,
Job search.
job recommendations.
Simple apps.
And each of these teams had the autonomy to make decisions.
Solve problems within their area of responsibility.
That's a big shift. It requires a lot of trust from leadership.
It does. But they also realized that they needed to provide those teams with the right tools.
The right support.
To be successful.
So they invested in building a strong internal platform.
That provided essential services.
Things like data analytics, user authentication, communication tools.
That created that foundation.
That enabled their teams to build great products more efficiently.
And they implemented a rigorous OKR process.
Aligning team goals with company objectives.
Giving teams the autonomy to define their own key results.
It sounds like they created a really powerful system for driving innovation and growth. So what were the results?
The results were pretty impressive.
Okay, I'm eager to hear.
They were able to significantly increase their development velocity.
They were shipping new features and products much faster than before.
And they also saw a significant improvement in product quality.
As measured by customer satisfaction and engagement. So it was a win-win.
They were moving faster, building better products.
And they created a more engaged and motivated workforce.
People were excited to come to work every day.
They felt empowered.
Valued.
They felt like they were making a difference.
That's the dream, isn't it?
It is. To create a work environment where people feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves.
Where they have the autonomy to make a real impact.
Where they're surrounded by talented and supportive colleagues.
It's not just a pipe dream.
This case study shows that it's achievable.
It's a reminder that building great products is about more than just process and technology.
It's about the people.
It's about creating a culture that empowers them to do their best work.
It's about leadership that trusts their teams.
Provides them with the support and guidance they need to succeed.
Speaking of leadership, these sources highlight some incredibly inspiring product leaders
who have embraced these principles
and achieved remarkable results.
I'm excited to dive into those examples.
Me too. I think there are some valuable lessons to be learned from their experiences.
They offer a glimpse into the minds of those who have walked the walk.
It's not just theory.
It's a proven path to success.
One of the most compelling stories comes from Judy Guilford.
Oh, yeah, she's amazing.
Seasoned product leader. She's held executive roles at HP, Apple, Microsoft.
Wow, the big leagues.
Her journey really emphasizes the importance of adaptability.
A willingness to embrace new challenges.
A deep commitment to building great products.
Products that make a difference.
Her career spanned the early days of the personal computer revolution.
A time of constant change.
Disruption.
And she navigated those changes with remarkable agility.
moving from hardware to software,
From enterprise to consumer,
from established giants to scrappy startups.
she's seen it all.
It's amazing how she was able to adapt and thrive in such a dynamic environment.
I bet her time at Apple and Microsoft really shaped her leadership style.
Yeah, those companies are known for their strong product cultures.
They are. She saw firsthand the power of a shared vision,
The importance of customer centricity.
the transformative impact of empowered teams.
And she carried those lessons with her throughout her career.
It's amazing. Let's dig into some specifics of her leadership journey. What were some of the key takeaways for you?
Well, one of the biggest themes that emerged for me was courage.
Courage. Tell me more.
She wasn't afraid to take risks, to challenge the status quo.
To embrace new ways of working.
I can only imagine the courage it took to join Microsoft and launch MSN.
Back in the day,
That was a huge undertaking.
she had to build a team from scratch,
Navigate a rapidly changing market.
compete with giants like AOL.
But she never backed down.
She used her vision and leadership skills to rally her team.
To push the boundaries of what was possible.
And they achieved remarkable success.
Establishing MSN as a major player in the online world.
It's a reminder that great product leaders aren't just managers.
They're pioneers.
They're willing to forge new paths.
But her courage wasn't limited to just taking risks. She was also courageous in her approach to leading people.
Okay, how so?
She believed in empowering her teams, giving them the autonomy and responsibility to make decisions.
Solve problems.
She fostered a culture of trust and collaboration,
Where people felt safe sharing their ideas,
challenging assumptions.
admitting when they didn't know something.
She created that psychological safety we talked about earlier.
She did. And she was also courageous in her willingness to provide candid feedback.
Even when it was difficult. She saw feedback as essential for growth.
She wasn't afraid to have those tough conversations.
It's about approaching feedback with respect.
A genuine desire to help people improve.
And her approach fostered a culture of continuous learning and improvement.
It's no wonder she achieved such remarkable success.
Her story is truly inspiring.
It is. And these sources offer another fascinating example, Avid Larizada Dugan,
Oh, yes. She has an impressive background.
in both technology and business.
She's held leadership roles at eBay, Skype, Google,
Wow.
and she's also a successful entrepreneur.
It's fascinating how she combined those two worlds
Technology and business.
to drive innovation and create value.
She started her career as a software engineer, building a strong technical foundation.
But she was also drawn to the business side of things.
She was fascinated by the challenges of building and scaling companies.
That blend of technical expertise and business acumen has been instrumental to her success.
Absolutely. It's a rare combination of skills and perspectives
It's allowed her to bridge that gap,
between the technical and the business,
translate complex concepts into understandable terms
and see the big picture.
of how technology can be used to solve real-world problems,
It's about seeing the possibilities.
not just the limitations.
And she's applied that vision to a variety of challenges,
From consumer products to global operations.
to mentoring aspiring entrepreneurs.
Her experience has yielded some valuable lessons about building products and leading teams. What stood out to you from her story?
Well, one of the biggest takeaways for me was her emphasis on customer centricity.
Okay. She echoes that same theme.
She stresses the importance of deeply understanding your customers.
Their needs, their pain points, their goals.
It's about building products that solve real problems for real people.
And she emphasizes the need to continuously learn and adapt.
To meet those evolving customer needs,
It's about putting yourself in the shoes of the customer,
seeing the product through their eyes.
not just your own.
And she highlights the importance of empowering teams to be customer-centric.
Giving them the autonomy and responsibility to make decisions that put the customer first,
Creating that culture of customer obsession.
where everyone is focused on delivering exceptional experiences.
She also emphasizes the importance of speed and agility, recognizing that in today's fast-paced world, you need to be able to move quickly.
Adapt to change.
I've definitely seen how slow bureaucratic processes can kill innovation.
They can be soul-crushing,
She advocates for an iterative approach to product development,
constantly experimenting,
learning,
improving,
and she stresses the importance of empowering teams to make decisions and move quickly.
without getting bogged down in bureaucracy,
It's about maintaining that startup mentality.
even within a large organization.
Those qualities, customer centricity, speed, agility, empowerment, they've been key to her success,
Her story shows that it's possible to achieve remarkable results
even when faced with complex challenges.
when you embrace these principles and empower your teams.
Truly inspiring. And speaking of inspiring perspectives, these sources also introduce us to Audrey Crane.
Oh, yeah, the design leader.
She uses a really unique analogy to describe the role of a product leader.
What's that?
She compares it to directing a theater production.
That's a great analogy. Because building a product and directing a play, they both require bringing together a diverse group of people
With their own talents and perspectives.
and orchestrating their efforts to create a cohesive and compelling experience.
It's a creative collaboration, not just a series of tasks to be completed.
What are some of the specific parallels that she draws?
Well, she highlights the importance of setting a clear vision for the product.
Much like a director establishes the theme and tone of a play.
It's about having that North Star that guides all of the decisions and actions,
She stresses the importance of choosing the right people for the roles
making sure each team member has the necessary skills and experience.
to contribute to the success of the product.
It's about building a team that has the right mix of talent and expertise,
And she emphasizes fostering collaboration and communication.
creating an environment where everyone can work together effectively.
It's about creating that synergy, that magic that happens when a group of talented people come together with a shared purpose.
But it's not just about the big picture. It's also about paying attention to the details,
She highlights the importance of sweating the small stuff,
making sure every aspect of the product is carefully considered.
understanding that those small details can make a big difference.
And of course, it's also about iteration and feedback.
Absolutely. Just like a director rehearses a play and makes adjustments based on feedback, she stresses the importance of constantly refining and improving the product,
Embracing that iterative process.
making those small adjustments until the product is truly ready for the world to see.
Her analogy really highlights the importance of leadership.
A great product leader, like a great director, needs to be able to inspire, motivate, and guide their team to create something truly extraordinary.
It's about being that visionary, that orchestrator, that champion for the team and the product. I love that analogy. But let's move on to a more practical topic. These sources also talk about the need to optimize for empowerment.
Okay.
It's not enough to just talk about it. You need to design your organization and processes to enable and support empowered teams.
Kagan breaks it down into 3 interrelated goals: ownership, autonomy, and alignment.
Okay, let's break those down. Ownership seems pretty straightforward, giving teams a clear sense of responsibility for their area of work.
Empowered teams need to understand what they're responsible for.
Not just features, but also outcomes, customer experience,
They need to feel that sense of ownership.
accountability,
It's about giving them skin in the game
that pride,
that drives them to do their best work.
and autonomy
Autonomy is about giving them the freedom to make decisions
to solve problems,
within their area of responsibility,
trusting them to do their best work without micromanaging them,
letting go of that command and control mentality.
embracing a more collaborative and trust-based approach.
But it's not just about letting them run wild.
Right.
You also need alignment,
Okay, what does that mean?
making sure everyone is working towards shared goals.
Goals that are aligned with the company's overall strategy.
So it's about finding that balance between freedom and focus.
Empowering teams to be autonomous while staying aligned with the bigger picture.
These sources also mention 2 key aspects of team structure that contribute to empowerment: team topology and proximity.
Okay, let's unpack those. What is team topology?
Team topology refers to how you organize your teams,
How you define their areas of responsibility.
how they relate to each other.
So how do you decide on the right team topology?
Kagan suggests different approaches depending on the organization and product. There's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Okay.
Some common approaches include organizing teams around customer needs, product areas, or platform capabilities.
The key is to find a structure that allows teams to own a meaningful piece of the work,
Collaborate effectively.
be accountable for their outcomes,
And then there's proximity.
which refers to the physical location of the teams.
Yes, but it's an important consideration, especially with the rise of remote work and distributed teams.
It's a whole new world.
Kagan acknowledges the challenges of maintaining that sense of connection and collaboration when people aren't physically together.
I can imagine. It's hard to replicate those spontaneous interactions,
Those hallway conversations.
those quick whiteboard sessions.
He stresses being deliberate about communication and collaboration processes in remote environments.
Okay, what does that look like in practice?
Things like using video conferencing for meetings, creating shared online workspaces, and establishing clear guidelines for communication and decision-making.
It's about being intentional about creating those virtual connections.
And they highlighted the importance of building trust,
Psychological safety.
making sure everyone feels comfortable sharing their ideas, asking for help, admitting when they're struggling.
That psychological safety is even more crucial when you're not physically together.
It is out of sight, out of mind. You need to make that extra effort to stay connected.
So what are some ways to do that?
They suggest holding virtual team-building activities, creating opportunities for informal online interactions, and celebrating wins together.
It's about building those relationships,
Yeah, a sense of belonging.
even when you're miles apart.
And the sources emphasize that optimizing for empowerment is an ongoing process.
It's not a one-time thing.
It's about continually evaluating your team structure, communication processes, and leadership approach.
It's about embracing that agile mindset, not just for software development, but for building and leading your product organization.
Exactly. And Cagan suggests regular team retrospectives, gathering feedback from stakeholders and experimenting with different approaches.
It's about being open to learning and adapting.
But it's not all about analysis and improvement.
Right.
It's also important to celebrate the wins.
To acknowledge the hard work and accomplishments of your teams.
Kagan suggests holding celebrations, sharing success stories, and providing opportunities for individual recognition.
It's about creating a culture that values and celebrates success. And that brings us to another important aspect of building empowered teams, creating a strong product culture. What do these sources have to say about that?
They argue that culture is the foundation for success.
It's the soil in which empowered teams can thrive.
It's the environment where innovation can flourish.
I've definitely seen how a toxic culture can stifle innovation and drive away talented people.
It can be a real killer.
So, what are the key characteristics of a strong product culture?
Things like a customer-centric mindset, a bias towards action, a willingness to embrace risk and failure, and a commitment to continuous learning and improvement.
It's about creating an environment where people are encouraged to think differently, to experiment, to learn from their mistakes, and to always strive for excellence.
And Kagan argues that building this kind of culture requires more than just words and policies.
It's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly. It's about establishing shared values and beliefs that guide everyone's behavior,
It's about setting the example,
embodying those values.
the behaviors you want to see in your teams.
And Kagan argues that strong product leadership is crucial for shaping and reinforcing that culture.
I can see that. Product leaders, they need to set the tone,
They need to be the role models,
embodying those values.
the behaviors they want to see in their teams,
They need to be visible champions for that product culture.
consistently reinforcing those values in everything they do,
It's about setting the tone from the top.
establishing that expectation.
This is how we do things around here.
And Kagan offers some practical ways for product leaders to do just that.
Okay, I'm always curious to hear about those practical tips. What did he suggest?
Things like celebrating customer wins,
Okay.
sharing stories of innovation and learning, recognizing behaviors that align with the company's values,
It's about making those values come alive.
making them tangible and real for everyone.
I love that. It's about showing, not just telling. But building this kind of culture, it's not a one-time thing, is it?
It's not. The sources emphasize that it's an ongoing process
A journey
of continuous improvement and adaptation.
just like everything else in the product world.
You're constantly evaluating, seeking feedback, making adjustments,
Making sure your culture supports your goals.
and the needs of your teams,
It's that agile mindset.
applied to the way you build and lead your organization.
So what's the ultimate message from these sources? What are the key takeaways for our listener who's clearly fascinated by empowered teams?
They really drive home the point that building extraordinary products, it's not about some magic formula.
There's no shortcut.
It's about building a culture that empowers people to do their best work.
And what does that kind of culture look like?
It's an environment where everyone feels valued, challenged, supported.
Supported to grow.
It's about fostering a mindset of innovation, collaboration, and putting the customer first.
And it's about embracing the journey
Knowing that it's a continuous process.
of learning, adaptation, and growth,
They really emphasize that spirit. This journey can be challenging.
where it's incredibly rewarding.
It's about pushing boundaries, embracing uncertainty, creating something truly extraordinary,
But it all begins with a simple yet powerful shift.
empowering your teams.
When you empower your teams, you unlock their creativity,
their passion.
their full potential
You create a force for innovation.
that can transform your business,
It's about creating a ripple effect.
where empowered teams inspire others,
And that energy spreads throughout the organization.
and even beyond.
And as we've seen, it's not just a nice idea.
It's a proven path to success.
We've certainly unearthed some credible insights today.
It's clear you're passionate about this.
I am.
The power of empowered teams.
And these sources have given us a lot to think about. But as always, we want to leave you with one final thought.
Something to spark further exploration.
We've talked about vision, strategy, empowerment, culture.
But at the heart of it all,
Lies a fundamental question.
what kind of impact do you want to make in the world?
What problem are you passionate about solving?
What product would you create if you had no fear of failure?
Those are powerful questions. And as these sources remind us, the world needs more empowered product teams.
More visionary leaders.
More extraordinary product.
Products that make a positive difference.
So go forth and create something amazing.
Happy building.